little bit nervous before races. My name's Camille Connolly. I go to Marysville Pilchuck High School. I've been running competitively since 9th grade, my freshman year.
My name is Doris Brown Heritage. I'm 57. I coach cross country and track, and I've been a runner for a long time. The bee's nest is kind of out toward that cone over there. So you see they've moved the starting line this way, and you just want to stay. We may not be the team winners, but we always come through with the number one.
So anybody who's going to be running in the 1600 or the 100 should start warming up. Okay? Your head up so you're... My name is Charlotte Lettuce Richardson. I'm a track coach and I'm a filmmaker. I'm curious about the women who ran before me and about the young women who run today.
I started running probably at the age of 9 months, so I guess I've always been a runner. I wasn't aware that there was a sport of track and field. I wasn't aware that there were the Olympics. Somehow in my early life, first grade, my goal was to be the first woman to climb Mount Everest. So when I heard about the fact that you could be on a track team, I thought, oh great, this will help me to get in condition to be a mountain climber.
I got started running watching my dad compete in fun runs. My mom would take us along the side and we'd cheer for him. And I thought it must be really fun to be out there. A lot of people were doing it.
How many meters?
It's always been a positive experience, a way to bond with my family.
My parents weren't excessively supportive. It was too unusual for one thing, and they felt I was a tomboy. And besides that, if I had time to do these things, I probably had more time to work around the farm. But after about a year, a coach at a club in Tacoma wanted me to turn out, and they finally decided it would be okay for me to give it a try.
Growing up in the 50s and 60s, I'm not really involved in sports. In fact, there are hardly any sports for girls to be involved in. It's really not a part of a girl's childhood. I am extremely active, and probably being in sports would be good for me. I have so much energy that I exhaust my parents and my teachers. Although reluctant to play sports, my brother is really good at baseball. In fact, every sport he tries, he's good at. He is the athlete in the family.
I liked softball a lot. In fact, I think when my folks decided that I should make a choice, it was almost softball. But the difference was, in softball you had to have 2 teams of people, and there weren't very many girls very interested in being active, and running you could do by yourself.
I love to compete. Training prepares me for competitions, and competing is so much fun because you see how much work you've done.
There was a rule, a league rule, that girls couldn't be on the track. So running that I did was at home. So I ran on the beach and in the woods every morning before I did other things. And that probably was better training than what athletes were doing in those days.
In the 6th grade, I'm the tallest of both the boys and the girls, and I'm also the very best standing long jumper. When we run around the field, I always come in first, but nothing is ever said. No one encourages me to run. By the time I get to high school, I have forgotten about that fast runner and that long jumper, and except for the President's Physical Fitness Day 1 day a year, I never run. I read 17 magazine, and I think about my body, and I never realized that this tall, thin person could be a perfect runner.
As a woman, I believe that women should be in sports. I believe that I belong here, and that women should have been able to do sports like cross country and running for many years longer than they have been able to. My mom reminds me all the time, we weren't able to do it when I was a child. And I remember that, and I want to take every opportunity that we have and make the best of it.
The coach that I had in Tacoma, whose name was Robert McQuarrie, and he was 72 years old and knew nothing about the sport, had a little neighborhood girl who he felt was very talented, and she needed the opportunity. My workouts at that time were to run down the road as hard as I could, a quarter of a mile. And when I'd recovered, the stomach cramps and all that come with that kind of thing when you don't know you're supposed to warm up, run back down the road as hard as I could, and then go to the garden and long jump for half an hour. He took us to races. He got the local Elks Club to donate white cotton sweatpants and a sweatshirt. He bought us track shoes and took us to some meets.
In the summer of 1971, I'm living in a rental house near the University of Massachusetts. I'm working as a chambermaid in the local Howard Johnson's motel. I feel lost. We are still protesting the war in Vietnam and the lives our parents are leading. But as women, our roles within these movements have not changed. While sitting on the front steps of my rental house, I see a group of young men running out of our street in the evenings. One evening, one of the runners slows down as he runs past. I ask them where they have been, not believing they could be running the whole time, but they have. A couple of nights later, I see them coming back from a run. They call for me to join them, and I do. I run 2 miles, and I outsprint them at the end. The men are equally surprised, and one of them, Tom Dedarian, encourages me to train. He sees something in me that I do not see in myself. Suddenly, my world shifts. A new world opens to me.
In 1960, 800 meters was in the Olympics for women. And so our team was going to get on this train and go down to Corpus Christi, Texas, and be in the nationals and then in the Olympic trials. It took us about a week to get down there. We stopped in Denver and ran a 400 on the way. And we didn't have sleeping cars. We were sitting up this whole time. And when the train would stop, we would get off and run down the tracks and back a little ways. So you can imagine we were in fine shape when we got there. After the Olympic trials, we got on the bus and went from Texas to Emporia, Kansas. And the athletes who went on this bus were the ones who had the potential of going to Rome to the Olympics. And it was very interesting to some of us who are from the North who weren't aware of what segregation meant, that the blacks had to sit in the back of the bus. So we would jump on the bus and take the back seats really fast. And I remember Barbara Jones, who was one of the major sprinters at that time, saying, "Now you be discreet, be discreet." And we just thought this was hilarious.
Later that same summer, we put an ad in the University of Massachusetts College newspaper. The women's movement is exploding on campus. We want to start a club of women who will train and race together. At the first meeting, 10 women show up. We train together, we race together. We find resistance at every turn. We are challenging the way that women are perceived. In races, we are often laughed at by spectators on the sidelines. Often there is no recognition at the end of the race that we have even finished. Men runners who have never seen a woman race before are suddenly transformed into believers.
When I came home from the Olympic trials, I went to Seattle Pacific University, and there was a men's team, quite a good team, and I asked if I could run with the guys, and the coach said he didn't want to coach women, he never had, but if the guys wanted me to, I could run with them. And they said, "Sure, you can run with us."
Okay, they're ready.
I didn't want them to change their mind about it, so I tried to run as hard as they did and do what they did. And I really didn't run as well while I was in college as I did before I trained, because I was always hurt and I was running too hard.
I have a similar experience. I too joined the men's cross-country team at the University of Massachusetts. I don't know if it'll be allowed, but I try anyways. The coach is not happy, but he grudgingly hands me shoes, a uniform, and a locker number. I run junior varsity on the men's cross-country team, and sometimes when I beat one of the men, he drops off the team.
If I wasn't able to run, I'd probably die. I wish I'd be able to do it on a sports team if it was 20 years ago. If not, I'd probably be running by myself.
Racing is a simple thing. You run from one point to the other as fast as possible.
Get a lane, just find the hole. It's no biggie. Keep going down.
The scariest part is when you step up to that starting line. But once that gun goes off, something important happens. You compete, and afterwards, you feel like you've accomplished something.
I love to compete. There's a lot of people out there that I've met, and I have friends with a lot of the people from other teams. And it's fun to race against them and see how you measure up.
From the Agrodome at the Pacific National Exhibition, at least 7 records were broken on this fine new indoor track. Another one was equal. In 2 days...
I have 2 really memorable races I'd like to tell you about. One was a track race. It was my first mile. A Canadian athlete was expected to run a world record, and we weren't known down here. So we went up to this meet in Canada. Oh, it was so exciting. It was so much fun. The plan was that near the end I would try to pass Roberta Pico and win this race. But I felt so good in the middle, I just needed to go then. And I was able to get quite a good lead and just keep getting further and further ahead.
And the award for the outstanding female athlete of this meet goes to the amazing Doris Brown of the Falcons, who set a new world record here in the women's mile run. There
And that feels pretty good as an athlete. It feels good to win and to feel good running when your legs come up by themselves and you just want to keep going and going.
Doris Brown of the Falcons.
The first year the women were allowed to run cross-country was in 1967. The race was in Wales. Started out behind the well-known Lincoln twins of Great Britain, and I felt great, was able to pass, and just enjoy going through the mud, jumping over the bushes and the trees. It was a wild course. Also covered about 17 soccer fields. Just a real fun race in really ugly weather. Apparently my kind of thing. And I remember the men's trophy was about this tall, and I got a medal about this big, and I couldn't have been happier. I didn't need the big one. It was so exciting to be in a place where everybody appreciated the efforts of each other, and to have a whole hall of people standing up and clapping for you, and to think we were the first ones to get to run that cross-country race.
In the early 70s, I am running in a 20-kilometer road race in Gardner, Massachusetts. I win the race with one of the fastest times in the world at that distance. Gardner, Massachusetts is a town known for its furniture making, and the prizes for the men are beautiful wooden chairs. When I go up to get my prize, the mayor of the town hands me a miniature doll's chair. I accept my prize, but jokingly ask for a big chair next year. The next year, I win again, and the mayor proudly hands me a normal-sized chair.
In the early days of women's running, I think there was some discrimination. In my case, the memories that I have would be running around Green Lake. I could go there for weeks on end and never see another woman. And men would swear at me, they would push me in the lake, they would throw things at me. And I would come home and say, I'm never running again. And then the next day, of course, you forget that kind of thing and you go back out and do it.
In the fall of 1971, I run in the men's New England Cross Country Championships in Haverhill, Massachusetts. Tom Derderian signs me up as C. Lettuce, and I get a number. As we line up on the starting line, I try to blend in with the men around me. I am the only woman in the race, and probably the only woman to have ever run in this championship. Just as the gun is about to go off, Jock Semple, a race official, spots me on the starting line. He runs towards me shouting. The men around me form a barrier, and I take off. Jock never catches me, but he is at every corner, every turn, yelling, shouting. As I sprint to the end, my way is blocked by race officials. I am not allowed to finish.
Place that there was no discrimination. I think I could speak for other female athletes as well. We've always been supported by male track and field athletes.
I think the guys are more accepting of young women's running now, too. It used to be, oh my gosh, you're getting beat by a girl, but now it's more, oh, you were beat by Camille.
Finally, in 1968, I made an Olympic team. It had taken me about 12 years. I trained very hard. I went to Mexico. Still hadn't run too many races with other people. Another example of this would be Mary Decker in 1984, where she had the collision, not being used to running with other athletes. Because still, there weren't that many women running. So for me, I was knocked down. A girl from France grabbed me by the arm and pushed me down, and I took, I think, fourth or fifth place, which was pretty disappointing because I felt like I could have had a medal. I was maybe ready to get a medal.
It is my first year running and my third race ever. I am running in the Women's New England Cross Country Championships in South Natick, Massachusetts. I am in the lead, which is a surprise to everyone, as I'm running against Francie Craker, an Olympian, and Janet Bristol, a top finisher in last year's World Cross Country Championships. As we head into the last mile, I take a left instead of going straight. Janet runs after me, grabbing me by the arm to tell me I've gone the wrong way. She pulls me back on the course. I pull ahead and win the race. But for years, I'll wonder about that act of kindness. In 1972, we hear about Title IX and we feel great hope. We wait for the changes, but very little happens. There are no regulations to force institutions to comply with the law. It is not until 1975 that these regulations will be put into effect. Suddenly, the face of sport for women and girls will change forever.
In 1972, on the Olympic level, the 1500 was taken in as an Olympic event for women. So those of us who are running shorter than we desired, we're really looking forward to this year. And to be able to run in the Olympics the first time the event is put in is very exciting. My experience was exciting until just before the race started. And my time was quite good. I think I was one of the very top individuals. I had the national record and maybe even I'd had the world record. So I was looking forward to doing really well in that race. But as you might know about the high jump at the Olympics, sometimes they take the curb out and use the track for the approach to the high jump. And a piece of the curb had been left laying out on the track. And I stepped on that, turned my foot over, broke 5 bones in my foot, and tore my peroneal tendon. So I wasn't able to race. The doctor wasn't that interested in taking a look at a female athlete. He was busy with the male athletes. And so it wasn't until I got home that I knew I was seriously injured. And that was the end of my Olympic career.
In 1974, I'm running in the Women's National Cross Country Championships. I'm having an incredible race, running beyond my expectations. At one point in the race, as I crest the top of the steep hill and start down the other side, I spot just ahead of me Doris Heritage, my hero. I'm astounded, amazed, and as I pass her, I glance over and realize her arm is in a cast. Not only is she at the end of her competitive career, over 30, but she is still running in the top 10 in a national championship. I finished 5th, elated but humbled by Doris.
One of the greatest joys of running for me has been the camaraderie in running. In fact, Charlotte, we've been involved in a couple races like this. Was it Legs Mini Marathon in Central Park? I ran several miles with you. And that's probably the thing I remember the best about that race.
By 1975, the Lakes Mini Marathon has grown from 50 women to 300, and this year women from the West Coast have come to race. It is a race like the men have had for years. We are featured in the newspaper, the radio, the television. When the gun goes off, a pack of the top women surge to the front. We look at each other in amazement, never believing this could happen. Mile after mile, we run together. Finally, with 400 meters to go, we realize we are running a race. Someone has to go. I leave my fellow runners, my sisters, and sprint to win.
I coach both male and female athletes on the college level. And some of the differences that I've observed would be that as women have had scholarships, their attitudes about sport become more like males. It used to be that a female would be so happy to have the opportunity to be on a team, to have coaching, to be able to go to meets, to have a competitive lifestyle. Now, females, I think, come out of high school, and the major reason that they'll run will be to get that money. I think when you change the reasons why you run, the sport takes on a different aspect.
After 1976, the opportunities for women in sports explodes. Because Title IX can now be enforced, high schools, colleges, and universities are starting women's running programs and other sports teams. What has been a grassroots movement is now mainstream. I graduate from college in January of 1976 and apply for graduate school in sports history. That summer, I run in the Olympic trials in the 1,500 meters. I don't make the Olympic team.
After that time, I had to make the choice whether I would continue to train seriously or become a part of the Athletes Advisory Council for the Olympic Committee. We had already been working very hard for a women's marathon and other events. I was elected to the cross-country and road race committee on the international level, and that was a pretty exciting thing too, because I was the first woman to be accepted onto what at that time was a male organization.
Colleges recruit women to run for them. Shoe companies want women to wear their shoes. Women-only races are popular, and it seems as though the fight has been won. I run well for another year or so, and then I began to race poorly. My last race is at the Freedom Trail Run in Boston. From the start, I feel tired and out of rhythm, awkward. Women pass me who have never passed me before. I drop out halfway, a first for me. In the fall of 1977, I become the coach of the women's team of the University of Massachusetts. We are given running shoes, uniforms, and sweats, and we have a locker room and showers. We have a van to travel to meets, and most important, we have meets to go to.
My life would have been quite different as an athlete if I had been born a little bit later. Instead of teaching junior high all day, as I did at the top of my career, and then coaching afterwards and doing intramurals and working on my master's all at the same time, well, maybe I would have been doing none of that. Maybe I would have been just training, sleeping and eating and training.
In 1978, I take a job working for Nike in women's running promotions. I see the subtle yet distinct changes that are happening in the world of women in sports. Women see running as a job now and make demands like their male counterparts. Prize money, shoe contracts, more tangible rewards. The camaraderie has changed because there is more at stake now.
When we went to our first Olympic trials, the neighbors and the people in my community had little jars sitting out in the bank in the grocery store and collected money, and that's how I got there.
Right behind them. Good run. 5 in mid-break. Step up 1.
You have to stay in your lane all the way down. When you get to the finish line, make sure you stay close to your lane.
When I cross the finish line, I want to be on the point of collapse.
You know, maybe sports are really simplistic and there's lots of other hard things that people do in their lives, but in some ways I think sports teaches people how to do hard things, and a state championship like this, especially with kids this age, is not an easy thing for them to do.
The kind of confidence that you develop as an athlete, particularly as a runner, where you have to stand on that starting line by yourself and face the challenge. You have to be willing to make that decision, to make that choice at a difficult moment, to go out there and really see what you're made of.
At the start of the race, I didn't take off too fast. There's a lot of people that do take off really fast, so I just kind of sucked back quite a ways.
I'm not a valuable person because I ran fast, because I had a world record, but it helped me to have faith in myself so that I could go into other areas of life and put myself out on the scary edge too.
I I kept on moving up. I was probably, back in probably 60 or 70 at the start. And then by about the mile mark, I had worked my way up into probably 12. You come over that hill and the wind is in your face, so you have no momentum at all. You just try to get down the hill and get across the line.
I hope as a coach that always there are things that are more important to me than how fast my athletes run. Who they are as people, how they see themselves, what's important in their lives, their values and their lifestyle.
To be a part of a team cross country. We're much like a family. We run together and we also play together. We spend time together outside of running.
These are the times that you remember far more than exactly what happened in the Olympic race. I guess the main thing from the Olympic race that you remember is, maybe I'd rather just go out the tunnel and forget this. This is too much challenge. Your life really is relegated to the people who are important, things you share, the camaraderie. It isn't just something that happens that year or that quadrennial, but these ties last. They go on forever.
In college, I majored in theater while I was also running. When I was about to graduate, my father asked me if I was a better runner or actor. I had to answer runner, and so my life went in that direction. In 1994, when I started film school, I returned to that question. I was the mother of 2 sons, a track coach, and I wanted to reunite that part of me that loved telling stories.
I didn't reach the goals that I had anticipated, and so it would be pretty easy to just say, well, that was pretty terrible. But I can look back now and say, I was so fortunate to go to the Olympics. Mainly what happens there that's of importance is not the gold medal. This is great if you get it, and if you can get it, you should. But what's really important is that you make the most of the experience, and you don't want to rob the entire experience of what it can mean because you didn't race the way you want to.
I won quite a few of my races, but I lost some too. And probably the losing was the place I learned the most about myself. In the end, my running was really just a mirror to the rest of my life, a way of simplifying and finding out what was already there, a way of testing and of building. As a young woman, running gave me a purpose, and without that purpose, my life would have seemed overwhelming.
That has something to say about goals too. I didn't ever get to the top of Mount Everest, but I got to the bottom, which is a lot further than a lot of people get.
And most important, I learned that there is always another race or another chance to get things right. If you don't get it right the first time, you can always try again.
Thank you.